I believe you said, we are now the largest travel platform covering 75 countries and all segments of travel. Yeah. We are truly sitting at the center of the industry. So can you explain?
Yeah.
Since
if you think about what we built, it's pretty remarkable. Which is, travel is essentially, it's one of the largest industries in the world.
10%
of global GDP. 1 in 10 jobs, 1 in 5 new jobs are in travel and tourism. Last year we did close to $100 billion in bookings. Just shy, but almost $100 billion in bookings. And if you think about what the travel industry is, it's essentially connecting people who want to go places with people who will either take them there, give them a place to stay, or a great thing to do once they get there. We sit at the center of all of that. So on the traveler side, we're north of 700 million visits to Expedia customer-facing properties every single month.
And how many brands are there? I feel like last I counted was 23 or 7.
Many. Close to 30.
Yeah. So 700 million visitors per year to all of the
month.
Oh, each month.
Each month.
Sorry.
Each month.
All those.
About 2 million corporate travelers using it. We power over 100,000 offline travel agents are using it. We handled 50 million contact center calls or texts. And then on the other side, you've got 1 million properties are now on the core platform, 1.8 million alternative accommodations available on VRBO, 500 airlines, over 150,000 car rental companies, and we sit in the middle of it all.
And that's what you mean by platform?
Yes.
Supporting a whole...
Yeah, platform. I mean, we're connecting travelers on one side with travel providers on the other side, and we're trying to match them in the most intelligent way possible. But what we still haven't done, and what is yet to be done, is those other great things that travel agents did. And many travel agents still do this, and we supply a number of them, which is say, you know what, Philip, how was that trip that you took last year? And I know that you love to have the corner room, and I know that you like the aisle seat, and why don't you take another trip? And instead of going to Hawaii, why don't you try Mexico? It's very similar. It's cheaper.
So that's what the A is.
Yes, and also if something goes wrong, Philip, I'm going to monitor your trip.
Yeah.
And if this flight gets canceled, if you're going to miss your connecting flight, I'll take care of it for you. Don't worry. I'll give you a call and let you know your new flight. That part of travel agency, being the advocate for the customer, looking out for them, making sure that you know them, that you've got a personal connection, that's what the next 20 years are all about. So, we sit on a massive amount of data, like petabytes of data that would fill, if there were still disk drives or even just on those sticks, it'd fill this whole room. It's remarkable. And it used to be that really until a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, that we would take this data. It was called big data. For us, it's just data. It was called big data.
Thank goodness that phrase.
Yeah. You would take people that used to be analysts, and then they became data scientists. And those data scientists would
They get a raise?
They got a raise, of course. If you change the title, you get a raise. You're a scientist, of course. And they would do a bunch of analysis, and they would produce a report, and then they would say, here's what we should do. Those days are gone. It's gone from big data to streaming data. It's gone from modeling to artificial intelligence and automation. And what that's doing is allowing us to really live up to the promise of the internet, which is, I don't know if anyone saw that show Minority Report with Tom Cruise a long time ago. I don't know if anyone saw that. But he's walking through a mall, and as he's walking through the mall, the advertisements are changing based upon his preferences. We can do that now.
Priceline Group.
Who?
I thought they were, anyway, I think they changed their name to Booking Holdings, and not too long after you change your name to Expedia Group Inc.
Yeah.
Is this something more for Wall Street, or is there something that of value the audience needs to understand?
Yeah, well, it wasn't for Wall Street. It was actually for all of our stakeholders and all of ourselves, for our employees, yes, a little bit for our investors, for our partners, for our advertisers. Really, it gave us the opportunity to say, we're not a corporate holding company. we are actually the world's travel platform. We were allowed, by articulating the new name, to hang upon it a whole new vision, a whole new purpose, 6 strategic imperatives, guiding principles for all of our employees. It gave us an identity. It gave us something to say, hey, we're all part of this. For our partners to say, you know what, I'm dealing with Expedia Group. It's not just Expedia or Hotels.com or Travelocity or Egencia, the 4th largest corporate travel agency, but rather it is Expedia Group. And that gave us an identity, and it gave us a voice and an image for the whole industry.
We're just chatting. Lyft just filed 2 days ago. It's S1 with the SEC. That's the Securities and Exchange Commission in the United States, and the formal first step of going public. So what are you hearing about the S1 filing? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, first of all, I think it's going to be a very interesting year in the equity markets. You've got Lyft, who's coming out. Uber has said they're coming out.
Probably Airbnb.
Airbnb has said they're coming out. So I think it's going to be fascinating. We really are, I think, towards the end of a cycle where private capital was almost free. And these private companies were able to raise billions and billions of dollars, which was unheard of.
They go public at 100x, like Microsoft did or something.
Yes, and so, when you end up with these valuations that are so inflated, I think, the risk is you end up like Snap or some of these other companies that have gone public. They go public very high, and then, the equity markets in the short term are a voting machine. In the long term, they're a weighing machine, and ultimately their numbers catch up to them. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
So speaking of global and international expansion, that's always a priority for you and the group. And you've invested in Trivago and Despegar and done this and
Traveloka.
that. It's Traveloka in Indonesia, sorry. But it's still really, why is it so difficult, challenging? It's one of the hardest things you have to do.
It is one of the hardest things, and we've made it a real priority. I think I talked about it last time we were here. One of our big strategic themes is about being locally relevant globally and making sure that we are building leading experiences country by country, and that we're not just skimming and not just kind of third best at everything. And it's hard. We had a handful of countries that we really focused on. By the way, countries that in many cases we've been in for 15 years. And going through and making sure that you've got all the payment types, that your tone of voice and your content is in the local, the local language, the local flair, making sure that you've got, all of the photos, making sure that your marketing is locally relevant. This is hard. It takes focus. And for a global company, who at the same time is trying to harness global scale from a technical and operational standpoint, it's a hard, it's a hard thing to do.
Some interesting lodging statistics. I think I had this right with Expedia. 45% of your room nights booked were in a different country than, in a destination different than the person lived in when they booked.
Sounds about right.
Is that right? 1 in 3 room nights are booked on mobile?
Yeah, and actually, 2018, our mobile app growth for brand Expedia and Hotels.com, 50% year over year.
And the vast majority of HomeAway bookings are 4 or more people.
Yeah, that's about right.
And those are sort of unthinkable statistics just a few years ago.
Yeah.
But would you say it's more than about Expedia? Like, I always try to help the people in the audience that if their business isn't trending like somewhat in this direction, they should be thinking about this to grow.
Well, listen, the world is going mobile. I mean, it's happening.
It's gone mobile.
That's the thing. I mean, we're developing mobile first, and that's why our apps are growing so quickly. And so that's absolutely happening. People are traveling international now. I wonder with the economic signals we're seeing, whether things might go a little bit more domestic for a while. That often happens during downturns. But the first thing that people do when they get a little bit extra money in their pocket is they want to go explore, they want to travel. And so yes, people are going to travel internationally.
So Booking.com gets 20% of its gross volume in alternate accommodations with one brand. Expedia uses the HomeAway brand.
Yeah.
Which is the correct strategy?
Well, so remember that Booking Holdings also has Agoda. They've also got Kayak. They've also got Priceline. Remember Priceline?
I do. I went to high school with Jay Walker.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily that they have a different strategy. It's just they've got this one business called Booking.com, which just exploded, again, through great execution that we have a huge admiration for.
Yeah.
We've had a bit more balance. Hotels.com has done exceptionally well. Expedia has done exceptionally well. Travelocity, Orbitz. So we've just got a different mix of our portfolio. We don't have one that's just been incredible. Although I'd love to have one.
Yes.
Or two. I'd love to have Booking Holdings as part of Expedia, but that's not going to happen.
Keep wishing. What do you got? What's Expedia thinking going to happen at Airbnb with Fred?
I think they may be thinking about starting up a little transportation business, maybe a little flights business.
And do you think they'll do that by acquisition mostly, or do you think they'll do the unthinkable organic?
I don't know what they would acquire. But listen, I think that, all of the airline partners, I think all 500 plus of our airline partners are dying for another online distribution partner.
For sure.
They would love one. So,
So what will happen? It's unlikely that global aviation will incrementally grow if and when Airbnb launches an online air business. So those transactions are either going to shift from the likes of Expedia over or from supply to what do you think will, or it won't work?
Well,
it'll probably work.
Listen, I think that Airbnb did an incredible thing. They built an incredible business with an incredible brand that stands for something.
Yeah.
It's a niche business. It's a big niche. It's a beautiful niche, but it's a niche business, and it is very hard.
Vacation rentals.
Yeah, alternative accommodations is a one piece of a $1.7 trillion market, and the other big piece of it is air, et cetera.
It's a $30 or $40 billion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, even more. I mean, 30 to 40 if you just add up HomeAway, VRBO, and Airbnb.
Yeah.
Not to mention Booking Holdings and what we do on Expedia, but and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes through property managers, et cetera. Huge, but it is very hard for brands to port themselves into other lines of business. We know it. The people at Booking Holdings know it. Consumer products companies know it. It's very difficult. And add to that just the technical challenges of running a flights business. I mean, we're doing, I think the last stats, like crazy, like 15 billion flight searches, per month, or some crazy numbers. You have to have huge infrastructure. You've got to be incredibly good at, probabilistically figuring out fares and availability. It's hard.
GDS connectivity, and then low-cost carrier connectivity, and now
and again, none of the
virtual interlining, all this stuff.
And who wants to build another API to another third-party distribution channel? It's very hard.
But they're going to have to, right?
Well, they can build whatever they want, but they've got to get the airlines and the GDSs to help them along the way. So again, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that expanding into a low margin business that is highly competitive, that costs a lot of money and expertise to build, and requires the cooperation of people who don't necessarily want what you're building to exist, is hard.
What's going on in the space, and is Expedia going to hit the reset button in tours and activities?
I don't know about reset button. It's again, we've been in this business for almost 20 years.
20 years, yeah.
We do north of $500 million of activities business, and it's a great business. It's a great business. I think that it is one of those businesses, though, that has a huge amount of fragmentation on the supply side. It has been one of those businesses that, until the advent of mobile, was something that was hard to do online because simply people did not want to book in advance of taking a trip. I think that
it's also not the first thing you book.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the last thing you book, unless you're going for a concert or, a Broadway show, for example. And I think that as mobile has become more significant, I think we've got 100 million mobile app downloads as artificial.
300 million.
Yeah.
Wow.
It starts to become worth aggregating all the fragmentation. And you see a lot of players that are actually doing it. And remember, this is a big industry. It's north of $100 billion in activities from what I've seen.
Last I saw was 170 or 180 billion US.
Yeah, it makes sense that because of the fragmentation, I think there's a great revenue pool opportunity. Because you've got consumers now who you can hit in destination, I think capital looks to go to new things where there's some contextual change. And the contextual change here is that mobile is now in everyone's pockets, and you've got the ability through location ID and through artificial intelligence to serve real-time relevant offers to customers in destination. Yeah. I think that's a great contextual change. And I think you've got a number of players like Fair Harbor, like Klook, that are going in and doing the hard work of getting all of the supply side working. And so that's what's happening. And of course, we are doing the same thing. Yeah. So we've got a mantra, in addition to locally relevant globally, it's about being customer-centric. And this, amongst so many other customer categories, are things that we haven't historically gotten right. I mean, you think about, in the Middle East generally, we have not been particularly locally relevant. We haven't been particularly customer-centric. We're going to fix that. Even families, we have not been customer-centric in addressing family needs. I think that, huge opportunity, obviously, for us to be more customer-centric, more locally relevant. It's on the list. We will get to it amongst the billions of things that we can do better. This is absolutely one of them.